Good morning. It's great to see everybody here. A lot of the same faces that have been put so much time and effort and hours in on developing this MAC to get us to this point today. Michael talked about the background. Now we really want to get into the details and get your input on moving forward, the structure to make changes and some basic thought processes. We all know it's easier and more efficient to critique and edit than start from scratch. If we came here from the, with a blank piece of paper and said, we need to move forward, we need to develop a process to change the MAC, have a meeting in 2015, a lot more work and a lot more time would be needed. So what happened is the board of directors of CMAHC, we put together a straw man. There was multiple members also attended the Conference of Food Protection conferences to get some insights on how they operated. We also had, and is gracious enough from the Conference of Food Protection, their executive directors, current and past, be on conference calls with us to answer some of our questions and guide us through some of the, some of the trials and tribulations that they encountered on their history of coming forward. What we've got, we're going to be presenting, I'm going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of the proposed structure, how we're going to go about organizing this conference for 2015, the process, protocols, procedures to entertain changes and move forward. So again, this is a straw man. I'm going to start out by putting forward what the CMAHC board put together with all this input as a straw man, but there's discussion and decision points throughout today's presentation on getting your membership. Those of you sitting here in the room and those on live stream, we have the opportunity for them to send an email so that we can have input so that after this conference, we'll take all the information and refine the structure so we can move forward. So again, it's not set in stone. What you're going to see presented are just what the board of directors put together as a starting point. So it's not set in stone, wasn't intended to. So we want to develop an organization that works for our size, the intent, and the numbers. As Michael said, we started with the Conference of Food Protection. We looked at, we're different industries. Some things make sense, some things don't make sense. We need to do some things differently. So we want this to be responsive to our collective needs. And so your input is essential for the board and for us to move forward because we don't view this as our product. This is collectively our product, not the board, not the executive director, not CDC. It's everybody sitting in this room and every aquatics person out there running and operating, working in the public aquatics arena. This is collectively our product, and I think, as Michael said, with 72% of your comments throughout the development stage have been entertained and changed the MAC, I think that clearly, in my mind, shows that it is, in fact, all of our collective product. So one of the first items that we need, again, from a straw man standpoint, we looked at membership, eligibility. So I'm going to present what the discussion was, what our straw man from the board was, but we're going to go through this, and then we're going to have an opportunity, some time for then input from you folks on decision-making on where we should go. So the first thing is eligibility. Proposed to open to all so we can focus in enrolling partner groups. So we've had some key partner groups like the public health, the regulators, we've got the aquatics industry that encompasses a lot of different aspects of those associated with pools. We've got academia and we've got the consumers. And so we want to make sure that the groups, that we're not exclusive, only regulators, only certain segments, but everybody that's affected and impacted, as was with the steering committees, the technical committees, and the public input, they need to be part of, our view is they need to be part of this process and this conference to keep the MAC up to date and moving forward. We need what we're calling the assembly right now. It's the voting group. That's what the Conference of Food Protection. One of the issues is our dues-paying members can vote on CMAHC issues. Again, there are going to be some discussion points later on. Being that we want it all open and inclusive, do we focus on just dues-paying? Is it membership and all? So those are decision points. Right now, dues, that's another item. Michael had said that we, thanks to the National Swimming Pool Foundation with grant money to get us going and to support us as we go, we need to look at the ability to sustain us in the future. For 2014, as you sit here today, for those 200 folks that have joined up and be members, you'll know that it was free. There's no membership. But we need to start charging for 2015 to help defray the cost of operating the CMAC. I mean, to bring folks together at the conference. And again, I can't thank the National Swimming Pool Foundation enough to organize, provide the resources for this conference, because in the future, you know, if we had to make the arrangements, and it's a lot different world out there. So we need to be thinking about that and be able to be self-sustaining. Part of the thing for memberships, too, when we're considering this, you folks sitting out there, what's the benefit? Why would you want to be a member? Why would you want to justify spending dues money? But it gives you a unique position to have direct voice back to CDC about changing the MAC. I mean, you saw that as far as being technical committee members, as far as public comment period, but being a member and being directly involved and participating in changing or not the MAC really affords you the opportunity from your industry, your segment, to have a direct influence on what's going on, what this Model Aquatic Health Code is and what it does. So one of the concepts, too, is to have the membership dues cover a 2-year period, because it's a biennial 2-year cycle. So it would be the dues to cover the time frame from the first day of the biennial meeting to the day before the first day of the next biennial meeting. So again, these are concepts, thoughts that we're putting forward as a straw man. So we're looking at the basic structural components for the CMAC. How do we organize this conference to deal with updating the code? So I'm going to run through kind of a working outline, and then we're going to go back and in detail cover the individual components. So soliciting ideas, input. We need to get input on what needs to be changed. So we need a process on getting input into it. Once we receive the input, there needs to be a way to assess that. Is it complete? Does it satisfy the needs? So receiving change requests, triaging, check submissions. So that's step 2. Then it has to go for some technical review and discussion. From there to the conference and voting, so getting the members together. From there, once we come some outcomes of the conference and voting of some proposed changes, goes to the board of directors, back to CDC, as Michael said, to entertain changes, to make those changes, relaying that recommendations back to CDC. We also see the need that there's probably some standing committees that need to be supporting and dealing with some specific issues. So these are the different aspects that today we're going to talk about, and now I'm going to go back and the step-by-step on what we're thinking and what we need to hear from you folks on how we should move forward. What are some of the ways to move forward on this? So first thing, soliciting ideas, the input. So we were thinking, again, that first you have to have a timeline for submission. So if we've got next October 2015 is the first CMAC, when do you get proposed changes? So you need to have a timeline, deadline for submission to be established, so there's enough time before the conference. So we're working off the Conference of Food Protection model on updating for the every 2 years, because you need enough time to prepare for that. And we're suggesting that we start with a submission due 6 months before the meeting. So we need to send a notice out probably about 8 months before that. So you've got a couple months to digest and get your thoughts together, get your background data together so that you can have it submitted 6 months before. We would encourage consensus submissions from large memberships like the World Water Park Association, IAPA, and we had a really, I think, successful demonstration of how that could work with WWA with the public comments. Francine Gonzalez, could you raise your hand there? Francine, and thanks. She helped coordinate with the WWA on a lot of excellent comments, a lot of interest from the membership, but by Francine heading up kind of a group within WWA to collect the membership comments, get them together, and then put that forward instead of having, I'll just pull numbers out of the air, but instead of having, say, 1,000 individual comments from each of your memberships individually, you collated them and put them forward, and it cut down. And by having one comment representing 300 versus 300 doesn't change the impact of how we looked at it. It's still, it's valid. So I thought that was an excellent example of how the industry can work together, and it was really appreciated, and we got some excellent comments from World Water Park. So thanks for that organization for doing what they do. We'd like to encourage that type of thought in the future for the upcoming code changes. As I said, encourage consensus submissions. Right now, for 2015, we have no idea how many change requests might come in for consideration. And that somewhat's going to dictate or direct how we operate. Let's say we only have 6 comments coming in, needed changes. What kind of structure do we need to handle that? We could have 600, though. We don't really know. We'd hope that if we did our homework collectively, right, by gathering this information and putting this particular MAC edition out, that we're pretty much on target. But as you'll all notice, and Michael spoke about the research agenda, there's areas that we just don't have enough data. Here's what we put forward based on what the best available information right now, but we know it's not where it needs to be. There needs to be additional research input before we change. So there's a number of items identified. Michael mentioned at least the 16. Those potentially could be 16 additional changes once you get the data and the research together to support a change. So what we're thinking, again, too, for the change request submission information, name and contact information, who's submitting it, the nature and benefit of the suggested changes. And here's a key thing, as you all know, as we went through the MAC development, the rationale and supporting data are best practice, not just I think it needs to be, here's what I think is best, but why? What's the data? What's the research? What's the engineering data to support that change? That needs to be submitted. The specific MAC section identified in the wording table. So here's what it is. Here's what we suggest it be changed to. Here's the rationale, the engineering support, the research that supports that change. And one thing we also would ask, is there any potential ramifications for other MAC sections? There's a lot of things that are intertwined, so if you propose a change here, that could change another section. I'd like you to think about that, on what the trickle-down effect and what the potential impact on other sections are, and identify that. And also the cons of the proposal, and that this somewhat goes to it does capture the evolution, not revolution. It may be a very good idea, but it could be just financially not sustainable, or the ability to do that, or the technology doesn't exist right now, or it's so small to be able to support that. So we'd like you to give some thoughts too, or the folks that are submitting to give some thoughts on what are the negatives, what's the downside of a proposal. So we've got the input, the change request, triaging it. So the change, we're proposing or suggesting a change request review committee. This will be kind of an overview, looking at taking those change requests, make sure it meets all the submission criteria. Does it have supporting documentation? Do you have the code section? Do you have the suggested language? What kind of priority is it? What kind of impact on the code? And once this group reviews it, may result in submissions being returned. You know, we've got it, but you don't have supporting information. It goes back to the submitter saying it's not a complete submission. We're proposing a 2 months for review and triage process. This group, again, is not the final reviewers. It's just the first kind of sniff test of, does it have all the information needed to pass it on to then take a look in detail at the proposed change. Which brings us, and I'm not sure the time frame, I'm just trying to be a little cognizant of the time frame here, but this brings us to the decision time where you folks are going to be participating in this. You'll notice in the slide up at the top, the question marked light bulb. Slides marked like this is where we break open to the group to get your input. So I'm going to quickly just review what the points are, and then we need to open it up to the floor. We've got 30 minutes, I believe it is, 30 minutes allocated to this section for discussion to get your input. So quickly, review of what it is we want your input on is the change requests. Who can submit change requests? Should it be anybody? Should it be members only, dues paying member, or just anybody in the industry if it's a valid request? We feel it should be open and transparent, and non-members could not vote. You know, could members only, anyone, or if anyone can submit it, can only members vote or non-members? We're also looking at the proposal to create the change review request committee, thinking about the appointing a chair and vice chair to appoint members. We're looking at chair, vice chair, and a balance between industry and regulator. You know, what chair is it? Say industry, vice chair would be regulator, vice versa. Members, how many for a committee? How many should they be? Should the discipline be spread out. Again, regulators, industry, academia, general public. Could the committee ask for changes and get resubmission by the deadline? Or should just the committee take, here's what you proposed, it's good or it's not good, go back? Or should they say, we think you need to resubmit? And is the 2-month time frame to triage these okay? So this is what we're asking now for your input on this aspect of it. What do you think about this, what I presented? How should we structure this? Because it's our product, how do we move forward? Any first person to provide some input? Over here. I'd like to hold on. For the benefit of the live streaming, we've got 2 microphones going around, so if we can get the microphones to you. And ideally, we'd like one question per person, then get it back to the group, and then we'll re-queue if you had a second question. But stick to the one per person for start.
Well,
thank you.
The first, Rich Casiopo. Is this going to be a 501c3 corporation?
This is in fact
it's part of a long question, so I can technically qualify. And if it is, where's the funding coming from to organize? This
is in fact a 501c3 corporation. It was incorporated in the tail end of 2013, and the funding is by grants or sponsorships from organizations. There is no internal support from CDC or others, so as we noted, NSPF is the founding sponsor at this point, but we're actively looking for sponsorships to help us collectively move this organization forward and do what we need to do. Okay, next comment regarding, again, we really need to participate because we put the straw man together so that you can react to, but it's not intended to be the be-all and end-all. We really do need input from the membership here.
Just a comment, I think, on if this is going to be a membership fee organization, then if you don't allow non-members to vote so that you get input throughout the industry, the fee, depending on what it is going to kind of disenfranchise, I guess, end users and possibly regulators in some state, people that can't get that type of funding to be able to be a paying member. And you're going to overload maybe some of this organization with only people from various organizations that can actually come up with the funding for membership. So I think you need to have it as, whether you're a member or not, you've got to be able to reach out to everybody that is not capable of being a member for whatever purpose going forward. In any of these organizations, it's the same thing when you try to get input from academia or end users to get them to any of these various organizations, whether it's ASTM, NSF, this organization. It's difficult for them to come up with the funding to be able to attend those and participate all the time.
Okay, thanks. And just a little, could each speaker identify themselves?
Ron George from Neptune Benson.
So I just, thanks, Ron, but I just wanted to clarify that a little bit too. So there's 2 potential applicabilities of your statement. So who can submit change requests and then voting? So if you're suggesting that, correct me if I'm wrong, that anybody should be able to submit a member or not? Or is it member, but the question is the fees for membership? Could you clarify that?
I was suggesting at least that both submitting of requests as well as voting be open rather than strictly on a member requirement.
Okay, so, and again, I'm sorry to belabor that, but member, non-member, or member as long as you don't have to pay a fee?
Member as long as you don't have to pay a fee.
And if you have to pay a fee, then even if you're a non-member, you should be able to submit and vote?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Ron.
Just a comment for the live stream audience, just so you remember, info@cmac.org is where you need to send your emails now because the live chat's been turned off. And so info@cmac.org. And for those of you out there as well, the slides are already live on the cmac.org site under announcements. I see people in the room already looking at them. So they're already live, not just after the meeting. Thanks.
Okay, next.
Tom Kiekler, Occidental Chemical. I just wanted to comment on your triage step here. I think it is useful to have a committee of sorts kind of triage the comments that come in to make sure they're acceptable, fully formed before they get to the full conference. I have a little experience in some other code organizations, and that committee can waste a lot of time talking about comments that aren't fully formed, and really they don't know what to do with a comment because it's not properly put together. And so it's useful to make sure the comments are fully formed and really specific once it gets to the conference to debate.
Thank you.
I'm Dave Gifford with the Washington State Department of Health. I may make several comments during the day. I just got off a 12-year stint with the executive board with the Conference for Food Protection, so I have a little bit of a view of how that works and how that doesn't work. With regard to the specific subject we're talking about now, I think that's fine. I think it's okay to accept, what do you call them, change requests, what CFP calls issues. I think it's fine to accept them from anybody, not just members. Voting might be a different story, but for change requests, I think it's okay to accept them from anybody, and I think the time frames look just fine.
Thank you.
This is Francine Gonzalez from Whitewater West, and just my opinion is that this whole process started as a very democratic process, so there should not be a pay-to-play method for any kind of public comment. I think that if anybody wants to change the MAC, they should be able to voice their concern. I do agree that you need to have a committee that vets it and to be able to decide, is this persuasive or not persuasive, so that you can filter out some of the requests that may be not relevant and a waste of time. So I do agree with that process, and I think that if members are going to have to pay a fee, that you should keep it as low as possible so that everybody can participate as much as they can. I know a lot of governments are not always going to have the funds available to have a lot of members, and you may also want to consider having voting members that represent many people within an organization. I'm on the board of directors for ASTM, and that's the process that is used for voting, and that may be a way to approach it.
Richard Falk. I think if the change requests or change requests are viewed by the public and available for public comment, then that will address a lot of the concerns in terms of, transparency and not having to pay and that sort of thing. If the change requests come, now you could have some initial filter, just and so on. But for anything that's seriously considered from a change request, if it is viewed by members, non-members, and so on, then everybody can comment on it and enhance it and maybe help in some of the issues that Tom's talking about in terms of helping it be better formed and so on.
Richard, let me make sure I understand it. So if you wanted to submit a change request, are you suggesting this committee, once they vet it, then they get posted? Is that?
Yeah, posted, and then everyone can.
Right at that phase. At what point would you suggest posting? After it's been vetted, or just right up front?
Well, I don't have experience on the committees to know how much, kind of ill-formed ones there are. If there are a lot, then probably some vetting would be useful. But that's up to you guys.
Okay.
This is Michael Beach. Yeah, Richard, that is the intent, and so we'll get into that a little bit later after the technical review, is that all change requests that make it through the technical review that will be on the agenda will be publicly posted. Everybody has a right to print it, know what's going on before the actual conference. So they'll be, and before the vote, before the conference, they'll be publicly available so that anybody attending the conference already has a copy of them and has had time to read it.
Thank you.
Steve Dunn, Commercial Pool Systems. I've got a couple of concerns. First one being that the fundraising to keep the committee going, as well as the dues. One, that the dues be affordable, as mentioned earlier. Two, that the fundraising is kept to be, shall we say, impartial, so that we do not have any particular manufacturers or other organizations providing the majority of the funds, which then, shall we say, becomes biased and decisions and so forth.
How do you suggest, do you have specific suggestions in that regard, Steve?
No specific suggestions, but I mean, if we do have players coming up that want to say, hey, they want to donate $100,000, well, we need to go find some other players that want to donate $100,000 at the same time and try to make it matching so that there are not any one particular manufacturer, distributor, et cetera, that, again, wants things more biased towards themselves. When it comes in regards to submissions, I agree with what's being said, that anybody in the industry should be able to make a suggestion for changing the MAC, and I think that they should be vetted first and then posted, and I do suggest, highly suggest, that somebody respond to everybody that submits, whether their submission is viable or not, that they get some kind of a response back.
My name's Scott Hunsaker. I'm the treasurer. I will be in the back of the room at the coffee break. If any of the manufacturers would like to meet with me, I'd be happy to do it. And we can knock it out right here. So that's perfect. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Virtue, and I run the pools here at Multnomah Athletic Club in Portland. As a pool operator and manager, I would like to voice some opinions on the structure of the committee and make sure that we are represented on that. A lot of what happens with these code conversations is the end user is not consulted per se. So I would love to see the structure of the committee be diverse and include the operational side. And industry standard as far as committee structure, 6 to 8 people, not more than that, I would suggest on this committee, the steering committee. And I do agree that everyone should be able to submit change requests. I think that in order to streamline that process, using our technology to our advantage, such as an online form that has required fields, make sure you get people's names, phone numbers, et cetera, so that there is not just random requests coming in and absorbing these committee members' time would be very helpful.
Thank you.
This is Ellen Meyer from Lonza. Just a suggestion, we could have a fee structure. So consumers, if they wanted to be a member, it could be free. Other groups that don't have as big a budget as manufacturers like Lonza, they could have a lower fee, and then manufacturers could have a higher one, just an idea. But then we don't want to have undue influence, so you might not want to set our fees at $100,000.
This is John Lynn with Cyril Parks Entertainment. I'm on the steering committee. To the point that was just raised regarding end users, what I would offer up is I've been involved. Michael invited me to on this road 7 years ago, and we have worked very hard to get end users involved, and I strongly encourage those in the room that are end users, those that are listening in on this that are end users, please get involved, please sign up for committees. We want more voices. At times I felt like I was the only voice in the room because it's hard to get end users to focus on this. We're busy operating parks, we're busy worrying about revenue, we're busy worrying about all the things that we worry about, but I strongly encourage end users to get involved in this organization. So.
Okay, this is Michael Beach, CVC. Membership cost, I think we had a lot of discussion about this, and we didn't think it was too much to ask for $100,000 per member. But then, obviously, we're going to have to trim that back a little bit. We actually thought that membership, we're going to do this for 2 years, meaning that you will be a member from the beginning of the conference, basically, so you go through a conference through the next round to the day before the next conference. Makes most sense because it's a 2-year organization. We thought in the range of $50 to $100 for membership. Is that really something that's going to be such a deterrent to people over a 2-year period? Because I do think that we have to charge something. We have to run the organization. Let's hear from the operator.
From an end user perspective, I agree with you. It's very tough. I'm one of the few in the room, I think, and even attending this conference, and it's budgetary. That is a huge part of why I'm a little concerned with the Model Aquatic Health Code. I think it's fantastic. My facility can handle the requirements that may come out of it. There's a lot of facilities that will get shut down. $50 a year, we can't get our local pool operators to do a networking group for that. So I'm afraid that it will veer still to the manufacturers that can afford it. I was thinking $5 to $10.
God, we're going to have a sliding schedule. So, sorry, just to point out, that was a live stream question in that, so people feel heard.
Other comments, questions?
Eugene Knight from the state of New Mexico. I agree anyone should be able to submit requests. I really believe it should be members only voting on those requests. I think it would be real cumbersome to try to get a vote together from anybody that wants to vote. So I think it should be members only doing the voting on the request.
Is there any caveat as far as fee structure and membership? I mean, does your opinion change depending on what the membership fee would be?
Well, as long as it's not $100,000. I'm from the state of New Mexico. We're probably one of the poorest states in the country. I mean, $50 to $100 is reasonable to me. I have no problem with paying that fee. But if we get it too large, yeah, we're going to lose members that way.
Rich Cassioppo again. I think we should approach something like a House of Commons, House of Lords, where maybe we have associate members who don't necessarily have voting powers. But I see a little bit of a traffic jam here, because when Michael got up, he said the first thing we do, and I've been a lawyer for 40 years, before I do a contract, I lay it out, and it's easier to change once it's out. Now, you have the Model Aquatic Health Code, and now it's out there. But you have this as an independent organization, and everybody's going to have an opinion. Don't you think you need to start with a starting organizational document, like a business plan or something like that, before everybody's got an opinion about everything?
You mean like a constitution and that sort of thing? Yes. So just stay tuned. We'll come to that as far as standing committees later. We'll be coming to it.
Okay, go ahead.
Maryland. I'm an attorney also, 35 years doing that, and there's a quid pro quo for membership benefit, but I don't hear it being identified now. And literally, people are not going to sign up as members if there isn't something that they're getting for the membership fee. And I like what, is it Lisa, was talking about in terms of being more inclusive. $50 to $100 for some of the people that are end users as pool operators. They're not making $10 an hour. So it's tough for them to come up with that money, and they should be included in somewhere, and I like the associate membership idea. But what's the quid pro quo for the membership?
So I just want to make sure I understand. So are you suggesting that there be a fee even if it's nominal, just so, I mean, what's the point of being a member, or or membership fee? I just want to make sure I understand what the point, that there be a fee associated?
Something associated with the membership that has some impact on the future of this Model Aquatic Health Code. Mm-hmm. We can all do things like, stickers and things like that, but that's not what's going to, I think, drive the right people to this. My thinking about committees is that people with a little bit of power or none will exercise every bit of it every chance they get. And so we want people who have a benefit or some sort of motivation to be part of this in the right way. And I'm not sure how you can accomplish that, but the benefits might help that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Does mic work? Okay. Sorry. That's a very good question. It's something that we've thought about, and we'll probably get to a little bit later in the program. And that's being a member will allow you to vote on changes in the Model Aquatic Health Code. So by being a member, your benefit or incentive is you're able to drive change in the future in the Model Aquatic Health Code. That, to me, is the real value in the membership. You're the one up there voting. And we're a little ahead of ourselves here, but you'll see that there's committee work. And what we're proposing you today is that the overall membership, the assembly, the voting membership, will be the ones that dictate whether issues pass or fail. And it's been mirrored around the Conference for Food Protection. So I would say let's just be patient on that for a moment, and maybe we'll get to that a little bit later, but it's a very well-received comment.
I'll just echo that. The quid pro quo here is the MAC will influence aquatics across this country. If you want to have a say on how that moves forward, then you need to be a member so that you can be part of this process, and you need to help drive it. Otherwise, you're going to be out of the loop.
Could I just have a quick show of hands, just to get a sense, if membership fee, how many think that, level to be determined, but do you think there should be a fee associated with membership? That's pretty compelling. But a sliding scale, you said to be determined what the level, but
I'm Don Baker. I'm with Paddock Pool. I'm one of those dirty manufacturers that are out here. Okay. I'm sitting here listening to this, and if we weren't here, we're here because we care about it. And it's not all about the money. It's not all about the business. But if Scott's the treasurer here, there's a way to deal with donations that don't provide influence, and I think they set up a foundation for those interested parties, manufacturers, individuals, successful people that want to donate to, how's it go, the swimming industry. Now, if that was done, that would take Paddock Pools off the top of a major sponsor or any other manufacturer. So that's a consideration to look at because, do we need to know who those folks are, have an independent group that serves as that collector of a fund for a foundation? And that's just a thought.
to that end, and I'm not sure how, we are a 501c3, and the money, I'm just thinking from, maybe I'm not looking at this correctly, but the fees come, if there was a fee coming into CMAHC's sole role is to not-for-profit, to sustain and run this organization. So the fees would be all about just engaging the membership, having the process work. Michael?
I actually, this is Michael Beach. I actually don't see the issue here that you brought up. This is about sponsorships. It's not about influence. The vote is the influence. The councils are the influence. The sponsorships are there that, yes, you can get a logo on here because somebody gave for lunch and that, but that does not influence the vote. That doesn't influence the process. And so the sponsorships are the way that the CFP is moved forward, and everybody knows that, yes, you get your logo and your name up there. It's an industry investment in what's going on, but it doesn't influence the process. And so the process is set up so it really, people get to vote. It's a vote. And so I think that's a very different sort of thing in my mind. So I actually don't see the need to set up a separate foundation to deal with that.
This is John Lynn again. I got a question for the group, and I know you got a comment, but I got a question for the group. As we talk about funding, some organizations do variable funding. So manufacturers have one tier level, and frankly, it's higher than others. Operators have another tier level. Sometimes operator tier level is established by number of facilities that they operate, which seems fair and appropriate. So I'd just like a little reaction from the group as to whether that is a way to address this issue of variable funding level or variable membership fees.
This is Lisa again. I'll try not to take up very much time. I agree that would help tremendously, especially on the end user side. And one suggestion would be any pool operator that's already paying a fee to run their pool, if we can access a database or somehow tie that in, that's just a brainstorm idea, that might help a lot, because then if somebody is, it feels like as an end user that you're paying to dictate what you will be held accountable to as a pool operator. It just sits kind of funny right now with the understanding of it. And Model Aquatic Health Code is not a law, I understand that, and it's not actual code, but it will be the model as the basis. So if there's a way to somehow tie it into the license fees that we already have as operators, or get that database and then send out the information to all the operators, you might drive a lot more membership that way as well.
My name is Gwen Taylor. I'm from a small management company in Richmond, Virginia. My concern is in this discussion is that I represent a population of end users that we are small operators. We manage small pools. We can barely afford the people that hire us the stuff that you require. And if your pricing is too high, we're not going to have any input, and so we need to be inputted. My company is committed to getting this information out to the community, and that's why I'm here.
Does it work? Okay. So you mentioned the food protection group. What do they do about fees? Just because we've been using them as a model to some extent.
Do we, can we prevail upon our CFP person to discuss that more in detail?
There are different fees for industry and regulatory and others. Students have another fee as well. So it is a small sliding scale, but you know, part of all parts of the organization is based on transparency and making sure that there isn't a conflict of interest. So we may talk more about that as we get further into this, but I know that there's more discussion about how the conference is run, and we'll certainly have more conversation. But yeah, there is sliding scales. But we need to decide as an organization, is the goal to get a cross-section of all of the different stakeholders as part of this organization, or is the goal to get every single pool operator and pool industry member a part of this organization?
Ideally, we'd like everybody. Ideally, in a perfect world.
Michael, before you jump in, our technical people have asked us to hold the mic closer to our mouths so we can get it on live stream. We're hearing it really well, but they need a little more oomph. Sir?
Okay, I'll eat this thing. We hear you. We'll figure out what we're going to do. The goal is everyone should be a member, and so that drives costs down. So I think it's really great that we have the conversation, because I think we need to hear this side of it. But the goal is to make sure that people have a voice. So we'll go back and figure out how to do this, whether it's a sliding thing or not. We don't want people not to join because this is too expensive. That's not the intent. The intent is everyone joins, so everyone has input. I would only change the word dictate, because I don't think that's what we're looking at, to input. We want everyone to have input. Nobody dictates because, sorry, I'm at CDC and we make the final decision on what gets changed. You advise us on what should be done, but the ownership is at the CDC level. So even though that hasn't happened a lot between FDA and CFP, there have been times when what the Conference for Food Protection recommended was not taken by FDA. And so part of the role of the board and all the other groups is to be thinking about, if this is me, editorial, now I'm not president of the board, CDC, I don't want a statement, a change request coming into CDC that I know automatically there is no way we're going to do this. We're going to work this out before it ever gets to CDC and embarrasses the whole situation. And so it's about discussion. And so that's what boards of directors and all the vetting and all of that and input is. And so we can't get crazy here, because then CDC will turn it down, and that doesn't make anything look good if we have to do that. I don't want to be in that position. But so input, not dictate, please.
Okay. It looks like we've got pretty good input on most of these, other than, I'm not sure if we got feedback on, should the committee, this triage committee, ask for changes and get resubmission? How do you think that should be handled? Or just take it at face value? If it's not adequate, send it back and be done?
Again, just speaking from the CFP model, that's the issue committee that does that in the CFP. They're an invaluable committee at the CFP to make sure that any issues that are submitted, again, these are called change requests here, make sense, are spoken in good English. People understand which part of the code is being changed and why, and that they meet the requirements of a change request. That's all they do. They don't say, and we don't agree with you, or here's our response to you. It's just to make sure that the change requests follow that, those guidelines, and they're a very important part of CFP.
Okay, so it sounds like if we had a submittal, a form, this initial triage, they return it either, I think somebody said that we should be getting, the submitter should get in feedback as to disposition of theirs, so you get a form back potentially of, yes, it's moving forward, or no, we suggest it, here's the deficient area you may be able to resubmit within this time frame, or something of that ilk, Ben.
This is Kent Wood. You're asking for a scope of work for one committee, and can you tell us how many committees you're proposing and what they are before we can provide input on what one committee should be doing?
Yeah, let me just go back on some slides. Yep.
Just stay tuned. We'll get to that. You're moving ahead too fast.
Yeah.
Standing
I thought I had something.
Look at the agenda. Standing committees is on there later, but
yeah.
This is one of the most important ones, so it needed the detail discussed.
Any other comments regarding, suggestions regarding these, or anything that is not up there that you think is relevant to this particular phase of the process?
So again, I just wanted to be clear that the real question here is, should this change request committee, should they go through a vetting, iterative process, send it back, get more comments, send it back, get more comments? Or one concern we had when we talked about this was that committee would be overwhelmed. People would send in ill-conceived, ill-thought-out requests, and the committee would spend a lot of time trying to get them to better formulate, better think through their requested change. So that's kind of a basic question. Should the committee go through that process to try to be inclusive and try to help people figure out what it is they're asking for, or should the committee simply review it, and if it's not well-formed, not well-conceived, simply send it back and say, resubmit next go-around?
I think the public posting part can help with that, because so that way the committee itself doesn't have to deal with it. So the committee, you do the initial vetting that you described, but if something's ill-formed, you can you say it's ill-formed, send it back, but you have a place where it can still be public posted and other people discuss, because if they don't know how to write it, there are probably some other people that do, and if there are other people with similar concerns, if there aren't, then it's probably not a great idea, but if there are, it'll work itself out. In other words, use the broader public to help that out. I think that's the way to deal with it.
So they'll be posting, just as they come in the form they are, post them for public viewing. Okay.
This mic, okay. This is Jason Kuntz in the room, and I would like to provide a little bit of detail. I've had some extensive experience with other code-making organizations, some that are in the room, and they do a very nice job of laying out ahead of time exactly how to receive a change request. And I think that's something that the CMAC must consider, be very prescriptive in just how we want to have these requests come in, so the committee is able to adequately, process them and move forward. So we are learning from the other code organizations out there.
Again, Pete Caligari from Baltimore. It's a legal document, but at the same time, when you write a document, you want people to understand it. And so I think it's a difficult task for the individual who proposes, in most cases, to produce something that's a finished document. So I think you really need to take a look at it from all the perspectives that you can within the time frame, like the 2-month triage time frame, but give them something back that's edited, maybe that's given in a way that makes sense, that communicates the issue, or that fits in with the overall picture of the document. So,
just a quick comment. No, actually, now that you're saying that, it makes sense. And that I think, what some of the worry is, if a consumer wants to put in a position statement, are you ever going to get one that's written in the way that you want? And so, they're probably going to need some assistance to know how to do that in a proper way. And so what's being suggested is that you do go back and forth within a time frame. People are going to have to work quickly, but at least you could help guide that, because I don't think we want to cut off the consumer side of things or anybody else from putting in good change requests.
Any?
Rich Cassiopo again. I'm a little confused, which is normal state. I asked a question before, and you said wait till the committees, and this gentleman over here was applauded as a future thinker, which I told Marnie about. I want to be a future thinker too. So, but the point is, I'm still confused. Do we have a mother document? Do we have something to start with? I've been a constitutional lawyer my whole life, and I've studied the Declaration of Independence. And when Thomas Jefferson wrote it, he started it, and by the time it was signed or passed on July 2nd, actually, it was almost a different document. Do we have something to start with? That's
Well,
my
here's
question.
the start would be, the context of it is, here's the Model Aquatic Health Code. Let's say chlorine residual, your combined chlorine level says this. You want it to be, somebody wants it to be this. So the starting is the code section, and the point would be you want it changed to be this from this, and here's the supporting documentation. So that's the context of what we're talking, a specific. Mike.
Yeah, you're asking about the document. There are bylaws. There is a straw man, which you're seeing translated in the slides today. No, it has not been finalized. One of the committees being talked about in the end is the Constitutional Committee to put this all down on paper, but we have to make the decisions first. So check out the bylaws on the website. This is where we are from a straw man, which is essentially, in a way, part of the beginning of a constitutional document. But no, there is not one yet, because actually we don't want to write one before we've heard from people here. And so it didn't make sense to us to try and presuppose what you folks have to say, because there's some great comments here that will adjust how we do things. But volunteer on the committee thing, because we will be asking somebody to actually create that. So lawyers, please sign up.
But again, to just reiterate, the steering committee has met in person a number of times, has debated and discussed at length the bylaws for the CMAHC, because to your very point, you got to start with something. How do you even form a committee? How do you get a not-for-profit status if you don't have those documents in place? Those documents are there, they're published, they're on the internet.
And they're mostly, right now, they're about the board of directors and operation. So we'll move to the Constitution. We're getting there.
Correct. The bylaws are about the formation of the CMAHC, and now we're working on the Constitution.
Thank you.
Michael Beatty from Disney Parks and Resorts. So if we get a request change for something that we've already handled through the comment period, would it automatically be refused? In other words, we don't all want to go back and answer the same questions 7 more times.
Well, that's an excellent point, Michael, but I don't think we're going to have there's no intent to restrict anything. Here's the criteria, here's the code change, here's the rationale, here's the documentation, and then this will be the opportunity, again, much broader, instead of public comment and steering committee vetting it, an opportunity to take it to the full membership and with the supporting documentation, and then the input and the review of the full membership. So I would, Michael, unless you've got something else to say, I think any code section should be on the table.
Yeah, this is Michael Beach again. Everything's open for rediscussion. Give us new data. Decisions were made based on lack of data that conflicted or whatever. If something new has changed and there's some new way to think about things, we may move in that direction. Or if it was something that we thought didn't make sense at the beginning, but 5 years from now does, I think we have to be open to listening to that. But show me the data. and convince me, as Francine said. It's got to be a persuasive argument for what needs to be done, and that's up to the writer. And now, we're hearing kind of work with people to make it more persuasive or help people.
And the convincing will be not the steering committee, but the convincing will be all of, the membership and voting membership and the different councils. Excellent point, Michael.
Hi, this is Janet Gualtieri from Hydrology. We are speaking, and we would like for you to listen, because what we're hearing around the room is that you want our input, and you want our input for change, but we don't know what we're changing. We need to see what you've come up with. So if it's just the straw man code, then tell us that. But if you have organizations already set out, I'm from the business world. We don't set out in a vacuum to try to come up with a committee, come up with change without knowing where we are today. And I think that's what you're hearing around the room. What committees are you thinking of having in place? What work have you done so far so we can get an overall picture and knowledge of what you're doing, so that we can give our input? Because it sounds like everybody here is willing to give input, but we need to know where you are today.
Okay, and I think for clarification, and Michael can jump in when I'm done, but what we're discussing specifically here is the Model Aquatic Health Code document that is out there, it is published, and we're looking at changes to the Model Aquatic Health Code. That's what this is all about. This discussion is a format and a process to entertain possible changes to the Model Aquatic Health Code document. I don't know if that helps. Michael? Okay.
Joe Stefaniak with Jeff Ellison Associates. I guess my question relates more to the individual change review request committee. If I'm understanding it correctly, that committee is looking to just vet out that the change request is in the proper format, that it has a name, it has a contact information, it has a section of the MAC that it relates to, it has a suggestion for change, and it has supporting documents to that. I guess my question is there an involvement with the technical committee at some level, and whether that's the existing technical committees or a newly formed technical committee for each section, to then take that information and decide if that's actually appropriate before it goes to the CDC? And then will the CDC still be supporting the one voice and the actual composition of the language as we did in the initial development? We put all those different people's language together, and it was further vetted by someone at the CDC or a group at the CDC to make sure that it had one voice and that it had the appropriate language. So that eliminates some of the questions that Peter may have had with is the user able to provide the right language? Well, I don't necessarily know that they have to provide it and we have to quote that if we're going to go through these other processes.
And you're exactly right, except you're one step ahead, because that is the next. You're exactly right. This is the initial vetting to make sure it's complete, and then the next step after the break, we'll be getting into the next phase, the technical committee, and what they do with that information.